Howdy folks, I'm Southern Wolf of Southern Wolf Studios. Welcome back to Samurai of Hyuga. Let's check out our stats. The snow monkey is our spirit animal. Calculative is at 64%. Perverted is at 64%. A 50-50 split between charming and stoic. Protective is at 64%. Finesse is at 63%. And our attunement is at 55%. Chapter 11, Tetsuzan Bridge. Outside Jinjinto. The shrine's on the left, you can't miss it. A guardsman greeted a traveler with a yawn, still wary from the morning shift. It's his ordinary line, though the stranger was anything but. This was the second time in as many days that a katana entered Jinjinto at the hip of somebody who didn't look like a samurai. The idea of having two foreign ronin in the city wasn't appealing, though it wasn't his problem to deal with either. He couldn't help but stare for as long as he dared. The ronin was a woman, and a wild one at that. Her slim body was well defined. Not an ounce of fat was to be had on those abs or that waistline. Aside from regular hakama pants, she wore a black Harori jacket, but more importantly, nothing underneath. A wrapping of cloth was all she used to keep her above particulars in order. His glance rose back up, and in fear, met with eyes that were an inhuman shade of yellow. Beneath that mess of frayed brown hair, the fierce woman smiled. She spoke like a woman enraptured in ecstatic lust. Okami-kun, it's been so long. I barreled my way through one marketplace after another. Most shops were already open at this early hour, and customers started leaking in. Best to get the shopping done before the afternoon heat sets in, I guess. But the crowd didn't do me any favors as I tried to track down Hachi. That idiot knew these streets better than any of us did. That paired with his enthusiasm to say Momoko-chan meant that the three of us were left in its dust. But Tsumi's short legs weren't meant for speed, and the large bag she insisted on carrying wasn't helping matters either. Hey kid, why'd you bring along the backpack? Don't tell me you're planning on getting some reading done through all this. I paused the quick pace I set to give my employer a chance to catch her breath. She then used that breath to insult me. Baka, my talismans are in there. Do you even know where we're going? Tsumi's obi heaved up and down at every breath. At least her crimson kimono was as pretty as ever. I was impressed she could even run in such a long robe. I was reminded that I was supposed to protect her, not run her ragged. We need to get to Tetsuzan Bridge. With the sun to my left, I had to figure out which direction to go. Calculated. The sun was still rising in this morning hour. Right? Of course I know where we're going. Let's see. I felt a sensation of dread dart down my spine. Every street was packed and twisted in similar ways. The cars and houses lined up just so. Lines of people curled in and out in a chaotic sort of order. I'm not a fan of Jinjinto, and that's never been more apparent to me than now. Matsumi was prepared to unleash further complaint, but Toshi intervened. If I may, Okami-san, the east ward ought to be towards where the sun rises. Therefore, Tetsuzan Bridge ought to be to our left. I nodded and sighed a breath of relief. Good to know that the condo had her wits about her. The sun rises in the east after all. I wasn't going to say it was an excuse, but I was stressed out enough as it was. My mind kept going back towards last night, where Momoko needed a friend and all I gave her was guilt. Guilt enough to... We had to hurry. I picked up the pace. The bridge came into view ahead, and with it Momoko and Hachi. With the sun bleeding the sky orange up above, the two made for quite the scene. Don't you dare take another step! Do you hear me? The man shouted into the gust of air that separated him and Momoko. The woman stood on the edge of the arching bridge and swayed dangerously over its side. The bridge itself was painted a bright red, beautiful in the shade of the rising sun, and blood wouldn't stain it, I idly thought. Hachirobi-san, please go. I don't want you to see this. I strained to hear the doctor's voice from this distance. My eyes were drawn to her long hair, which flew about in the wind. Why of all days did the breeze have to pick up now? My name's Hachi, alright? And Okami and I didn't save you yesterday so you could toss your life away like this. The street fighter took a step forward, but even as tall as he was, he still needed to close more distance than that. At least he was able to get her talking. You nearly died because of me. I've only been a source of pain to others, so keep your distance, Hachi. I'm about to put an end to this pain, for once and for all. Her cry carried out with the wind. It felt as if she was right beside me. I almost jumped when my sleeve was tugged. The kid. Cease your voyeurism this instant! I command you to go over there and perform some sort of heroism to save Momoko-san! Matsumi brushed apart her bangs as one of her nervous tics. She did it several more times while waiting for my response. I want to, but this is something Hachi has to do for himself. Whether it was a man's sense of pride or a samurai's code of honor, I couldn't tell. Well, it probably wasn't Bushido, but even still, I knew deep down Hachi had to be the one to bring her off that bridge, the clumsy, good-natured thug. He should be the one to save the day, not I. I'd stick to what I was good at, killing, and let other people handle the nicer bits. At least that was my intention, until Matsumi smacked a paper charm on my forehead. She then reminded me that she is, in fact, a Shingenja.
Baka, since when did you become an idealist?
The kid squinted her eyes, looking around, unable to meet my gaze.
Excellent. The talisman has rendered you invisible to the naked eye. Now go over there and make sure Momoko-chan doesn't fall.
I was invisible? Who knew that the Shingenja were capable of such a feat? I couldn't help but think back to my years as an assassin, and how convenient this spell would have been. How many life-endangering battles could I have evaded? But when I inspected my hands, I could still see them perfectly. I could still see myself? Matsumi nodded in frustrated fashion. She replied, but wasn't facing me.
Of course you can. I haven't the time to explain its intricacies. The effects only last for a few minutes. Now go over there at once.
I had a newfound respect for the powers in which Matsumi wielded. It was no wonder that the Shingenjas were closely looked after and guarded. Imagining such power in the wrong hands was not a pleasant thought to be had. Speaking of unpleasant thoughts, I had to go get Momoko, fast. I was close enough to see the doctor's tears shine in the morning light. Her voice was strained and her breathing staggered, the pitch heavier than ever before. There was an edge to her words that caught me off guard. Was this really the Momoko-chan that cried in my lap last night?
You're so very stupid, aren't you? I'm the one making opium for Shiroyama. No one forced me to. I did it because I wanted to.
Her voice crackles and the tears ceased. Speaking of poison, her words were laced with it.
I was tired of making spare change cleaning bed sheets for old men. Tired of wasting my talents as a professional physician. I trained my whole life under my mentor, the renowned Matsuro Fuji. But when he passed, I became just a piece of eye candy.
I gulped and I was glad for once I couldn't be seen. I felt sorry for Hachi, who had already lost the Momoko-chan that he thought he knew. I couldn't even imagine what was running through his head right now.
Stupid, huh?
The street fighter took a look at his bandaged hand, which shook, but not intentionally so. There was a discolored bulge beneath the cloth wraps, where the poison dart had struck. Even squeezing it into a fist had to be unimaginably painful. It whispered something that might have been a prayer, but I couldn't be sure what. Looks like I owe him an apology. I don't really know what being a professional physician means, but I do know how it feels to lose someone you looked up to. Hachi's hand stopped shaking. He looked back over towards Momoko and took another step forward. Now I just might be an unemployed idiot, but I'm doing right by me. Right by Tankun. Don't you think so, Okami? He turned towards me and stared me right in the eyes. His brow rose up in confusion. What's with that piece of paper on your head? Calculated. Matsumi. I'd been completely fooled. I detached the useless piece of paper that the Shingenja had tricked me with. This was all just a ploy to get me to come out here. Shit! She got me good. I cleared my throat and mind of the incident. I'd have to figure out a way to pay the kid back for this, but not now. Did I approach Momoko, or did I try talking her off the bridge? Talk. Charming. Beautiful, intelligent, and motivated? Are you telling me that you want to become a splat of red paint down there? You gotta be kidding. I've met crippled, balding bastards out there who fought with everything they had just to live another day. To eat another bowl of udon noodles. Ugh. I shook my head in disgust. Disgust at myself, mostly. I had held back a minor detail. The one those bastards were fighting was me. Coinless, starving goons had picked a fight with the wrong guy. They had long since forgotten the need for noodles. My words gave Momoko something to think about, but she remained unsteadily on the edge.
But what can I do, Okami? I can't bring back those I've killed, those who fell victim to the poison my own hands created. And there's no way out, don't you see? Shiroyama will use me or kill me. The only control I have in my life is to end it.
Approach. I was about to take another step when a gust of wind picked up behind me. The back of my heels lifted up from its force, but more importantly, Momoko! I only had a split second to choose. If Hachi and I collided in our mad dash to get to Momoko, we may turn this into a group suicide by mistake. Who was closer to the edge? Who could reach her first? Me. I was confident in my agility when the situation mattered. The problem was, so was Hachi. He had longer legs and was faster on the mark than I anticipated. To prevent us from toppling over, I had to stop my sandals mid-dash. My feet crumpled beneath me and my knee turned into a pair of painful brakes that skidded across the wooden bridge. The pain was immense, but my mind blocked it out for now. Now all I could see was Hachi grabbing a hold of Momoko and bringing her safely over the rail. Thank the spirits. I could hear my heart beating as if trying to break out of my chest. The hairs on my neck stood up as well. And it wasn't from the pain. I realized saving lives is much scarier than taking them.
Momoko-san!
The cavalry arrived late in the form of the kid in the condo, the former which embraced the doctor heartedly. You could almost confuse the two for siblings, their pale skin matching their long black hair. Matsumi was in an emotional state and was tearing up even more than the near suicide victim. I let out a sigh of relief as one crisis averted. Toshi lent me a hand and helped me up to my feet. My right wrist started aching, even amidst all the other aches and pains my body ought to be feeling, like my knees, which were surely growing scabs right about now. But I could fight through the pain. I'd have to, if I was going to attempt what I was about to. When Matsumi finally relented on her affectionate grasp over Momoko, the doctor turned and bowed her head towards Hachi. Hachirobi-san, I said such horrible things towards you, and I'm deeply sorry for your loss. And I take full blame for all the suffering I've brought to Jinjinto. The street fighter looked away, his mouth fumbling for the right words. Tan-kun never held grudges, no matter how much I owed him. He was just that kind of guy, so don't make that stuff again, alright? Momoko bowed even deeper, thanking Hachi from the bottom of her heart. It'd take a noble spirit to forgive her after all she's done. My thoughts drifted to the danger ahead, but there was no need to disrupt this heartwarming moment. For people like Momoko and myself, who held ties to the underworld, there was no easy way to pry yourself free. If she was truly going to lead a better life, she'd need her freedom paid for her, and I barter in blood. The details about Shiroyama came gushing out of Momoko in a torment that I could only barely stay afloat on. But the more she spoke, the more this fetid steam brought back memories. Memories of a disgusting affair between a Yakuza boss, his ambitious wife, and my katana. I was constantly monitored, and so I never knew any more than they allowed. Their leader is a woman revered as the Charmer, though her charm certainly isn't in her appearance. Her presence alone inspires dread, and her gaze mesmerizes you. When rumors of widespread addiction to my... Momoko trailed off into silence. Her eyes shifted away from Hachi and opted for a place on the floor instead. When I heard the rumors, I confronted her. I'm not even sure what she said to me, but she swayed me into making more. I was fully convinced I was doing the right thing. Those eyes, I swear, those eyes rattle inside your brain and bring out the worst in you. They numb any kind of sense of conscience and let your greed take control. I was in the forefront of discovering cheap and easy to produce opium, and I didn't even bother to think about the consequences. The doctor's knees buckled and tears started flowing once again. Her information gave me a lot to think about. Too much. The Charmer was not only the foulest woman in Jinjinto, she was a former employer of mine. I'm the one who killed her husband and helped her take complete control over what they call the Yatagama Gumi. While the name Shiroyama didn't flow off the tongue as easily, the new head had done a considerable job expanding the group's influence in the city. I had a feeling it was due to no small part of Momoko's contribution. I looked down at her sulking figure. On your feet, Momoko-chan. Looks like we have our work cut out for us. Attunement has increased. On your feet, Momoko-chan. Looks like we have our work cut out for us. The burdens she felt deep inside her heart were not ones I could carry for her. I knew this from a life full of bad decisions, and existed haunted by what I've done. If she couldn't start standing now, she never would. But she stood and nodded, and sniveled away her tears. You're right, Okami-san, this bridge. My attempt to... It was all just an easy escape. If I'm truly gonna undo the harm I brought to Jinjinto, then Shiroyama needs to die. A voice that had remained silent throughout all this replied, The gaze you spoke of, Toshi remarked, and the greed it instilled within you. I'm not saying that you're free of blame, Momoko-san, but it is possible that this Charmer is the embodiment of the snake spirit we seek. Her death may bring us one step closer to fulfilling our mission. The Kunoichi had a point. If that were the case, then we'd be killing... Sounds like we'll be killing two birds with one stone then, Hachi interjected, vocalizing my thoughts. Just tell me where I need to toss the rock, Okami. We'll free Momoko-chan from those Yakuza and... Actually, I've been meaning to ask. Why are you hunting a spirit anyway? I glanced over towards Toshi, who already was shaking her head sideways. In contrast, Matsumi was bouncing her head up and down quite vigorously. It looked like I had to choose, and it looked like someone was going to get upset with me either way. Story of my life. It's a long story. I'll tell you later, after we've wiped Shiroyama from the streets. It's a long story. I'll tell you later, after we've wiped Shiroyama from the streets. I didn't want the Emperor's visions clouding Hachi and Momoko's heads right now. They probably think I was crazy anyway. Most Hyugans only pay the spirits lip service. Donating to the temple once a month was about the limit of their involvement in the spiritual realm. And aside from that trippy dream I had earlier, my connection was even weaker than that. But I wasn't chosen because of my petty. I was chosen because of what I carried on my hip, and what I could do with it. I was expecting Hachi to raise an objection, but he merely shrugged. Works for me. When Momoko started giving direction to Shiroyama's mansion, a picture of the estate came back to me. It was close by, with gold-colored walls and white thatched roofs. It was a giant building several lengths high, shadowing the nearby residences. It was about as extravagant as you could get, even compared to the samurai estates in Yamato. And while the Shinto religion stressed simplicity and modesty in all things, the Yakuza held no such ideals. I knew how to get there, and I knew what had to be done, but there was one problem. Can't wait to teach those punks a lesson. Kin Raijin Guru style. Yeah! While Hachi was competent against opponents made out of air, our enemies would prove far more tangible. He was in way over his head. My attention drifted over towards Toshi and Matsumi. Protective. A ninja who couldn't fight, and a Shigenja who was still a child? No. I wasn't going to let their faces haunt me at night. If they walked in there, against a gang of hardened criminals, they weren't going to walk back out. It was a den of death for people like them. This was something I had to do myself. Charming. I knew what the plan was. Listen up, gang. Taking on Jinjinto's largest criminal syndicate is something we can't do ourselves. We need reinforcements. I'll bring Momoko-chan as if I'm collecting her bounty. The doctor's eyes widened in surprise, but she nodded sternly. Good. Meanwhile, you three are gonna go get the Sohi and the city guards, alright? Unfortunately, my strategy didn't go over as well as I hoped. The kid was the first to raise an objection.
It's unacceptable. You intend to put all the risk on yourself? That is, Momoko-san is in too much danger. Yes, too much peril.
Matsumi stumbled around an argument against me. It is true that the alluring doctor was be in harm's way, but I couldn't think of a better way to get into a fortified Yakuza stronghold. I'm not about to let her die after all the trouble I've gone to keeping her alive. Seriously though, this woman had to be more prone to death than a salmon at a sushi parlor. Jumping in front of poison darts, yanking suicide victims off ledges, Hachi and I had had our hands full keeping her amongst the living. It felt so out of character for me, to risk my own neck for somebody else, especially when I wasn't getting paid to. Momoko's value to the Yakuza would be a greater shield than I could ever be. All I needed was the poison maker to get me within striking distance of the charmer. I received a grunt of displeasure from Hachi, one I saw coming. I agree with the young lady. We can't bring her back to those bastards, Okami. Who knows what they'll do to her after running away? He worked himself up into a temper, one I wasn't sure how to diffuse. Luckily, Momoko did. She interlocked her hands with Hachi's and looked up at him with those doe-like eyes, and the street fighter never stood a chance. Hachi-san, I swear I will never make that horrific drug again. Please allow me to do my part. I want to put an end to this evil once and for all. I could see the tall man visibly crumple into each of those heartfelt words. I could see the tension between their eyes, and how her long batting eyelashes could captivate any man. She might not need as much protection as I thought. Before we were about to begin, the young Shigenja managed to get a word in with me alone. We had time. Hachi was busy being love-struck, and Toshi was in a spiritual trance. I had delivered my plan flawlessly, but I also underestimated how insightful Matsumi could be. Though when I expected a yell, I got a whisper and said, "Okami, I know you're trying to keep me away from harm, and I know I said all those horrible words to you earlier back at the dojo, but please let me help you." The kid's eyes grew watery. "We're a team, remember?" I shook my head and ignored her emotional outburst. I couldn't allow myself to be persuaded to expose Matsumi to the danger. True danger. I didn't want her to see the side of me that I had tried so desperately to hold back. Don't tell me you're underestimating me, kid. We didn't make it through the crazed Yamato patrols and burning shrines on luck alone. I'll be okay. Matsumi Hashimoto. To think the girl from one of the wealthiest families in Hyuga was worried of a coinless ronin like me. She was blessed with spiritual magic while I was cursed with something unspeakable. She had a future and I could make sure she had lived long enough to see it. Her sniffling brought me back to attention.
Such arrogance will be your downfall. Oh.
She closed her eyes and smiled meekly.
I owe you an apology for the matter of,
deceit regarding the invisibility spell earlier. I tried my best to forget about the embarrassing ordeal. I must have looked like a complete idiot, and I had fallen for Mitsumi's trick completely. I didn't think the kid was crafty enough to lie, but she proved me wrong. Just don't think I'll fall for the same trick twice. Just don't think I'll fall for the same trick twice. I deserved embarrassment and more for relying on Shingenja tricks. Still, it was a relief to know that Mitsumi could think on her feet like that. If there was ever a time that I wasn't around to protect her, she'd need tricks like that to get by. A quick mind was more useful than a quick draw. The kid stuck her tongue out at me after I painted her out to be a mature young woman. Great. The dark-skinned ninja interrupted our conversation. Pardon me, Hashimoto-san, but I believe Momoko-san wishes to speak to you about your cough before she leaves. Toshi gave a warm smile that Mitsumi just couldn't refuse. The kid gave me one more look before heading over to the doctor, and the kunoichi had me to herself, just as she intended. Okami-san, the reinforcements are just a ploy to keep us out of harm's way, aren't they? I deflected her piercing gaze, but we both knew what was going on. A kondo, a street fighter, and a child will not sway others to our cause. You don't intend on taking Shirayama yourself? I let her words fly out like the morning breeze. I gave a curt nod, with an ache in my wrist growing more intense. Her eyes focused on the hilt of my katana. She didn't know who it belonged to, whose name was etched into its blade. She didn't know the last of the free swordsmen was not only a demon, but my sensei, which is why Toshi doubted my skill. Okami-san, you are no doubt a master with a katana, but an entire clan of Yakuza? That's too much. Even for the sword who can cut the heavens, you're not ready for... I unsheathed my weapon and revealed the name etched on it. Sooner or later, the kunoichi would have figured it out. Toshi was too curious not to. I didn't care if she knew, just... Don't tell the kid. Her pupils dilated in sheer fear among recognizing the name. I carried the devil of a samurai's blade at my hip. That could only mean one thing. You'll destroy Hyuga, not save it! Did Satsuma-kun truly dream of this? Her outburst attracted the attention of the others, but I waved them away. Step aside. I'm about to show you why you can't dress up a demon as a hero. Step aside. I'm about to show you why you can't dress up a demon as a hero. Heroes are bound by codes of honor, loyalty, and duty, of conscience. The Emperor wanted a warrior without those limitations, a ronin of unparalleled skill, a swordsman who had done the unspeakable to obtain the ultimate style of manslaying. All of those orphans back in Ginfu, and their faces that haunt my sleeping nights, were just a reminder of the price that was paid. The price of Hell's Release style, the Jigoku Ito Ru.